and welcome to another episode of Mindset Over Matter. I'm your host, Gabby Gooding, and today I am very pleased to be here with Paul Levitin. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you very much for having me, Gabby. I'm excited to be here as well.
Awesome. So let's jump right into it. You and I have, as we've learned, a similar background in that we started our careers in personal training and some nutrition coaching, and then we made what felt for me like a drastic change into the corporate world. So my first question for you is, what made you want to make that change?
Well, I wouldn't say wanted to. I would say more of I just am living my life in such a way where I'm open to new opportunities, and an opportunity presented itself, and I decided to try something different than what I've been doing. So I was, personal training, nutrition coaching, and then health and wellness coaching, self-confidence, life coaching, whatever you want to call it. I've worn lots of different hats, and I did that for about 10 years. And I figured I was ready for a change, but I wasn't sure what that change would be. And I was traveling and just kind of living life and working and doing my own podcast and doing a lot of other things remotely, but just with no real destination in mind. And then I got offered a job in an office for the first time in my life at the age of 33. I've never had an office job or a corporate job or a 9 to 5 or anything like that. So I said yes and decided to try something different. I mean, the potential to make more money was also there. So that's a real thing too, right? It's, that's, I don't want to, I'm not going to BS that part. It's like that's a big part of it. If they weren't offering me a lot of money, I wouldn't have done it. So the potential for one, trying something different, two, it coming just at a opportune, fortuitous time in my life travels, and then also the potential to make good money just made it seem worth it for the time being, at least.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fair. Now I'm curious though, was there any, and there's a reason why I'm asking this, we'll get to it later, but was there any part of you that felt stressed or scared or worried about making that change? Or would you say that the fact that you were open to change, I don't know if you're just like that in general as a personality trait, that you're open to change, or if it was just kind of a time in your life? Did you feel super confident about that, or was there some part of you that was maybe also worried about making that change?
I mean, yes and no. Am I not super like that where I'm just like super keen on change all the time? I think everyone is afraid of change. That's a very human trait. A lot of what I've done in my life and my coaching and my career leading up to this has been cultivating that awareness that we are afraid of change. And that's something to me is a trigger and a red flag. If I feel that tension inside me of being like, well, I don't know about this, I'm afraid. To me, that's a sign that I'm supposed to do something. So prior to this, like I said, my career, I was a personal trainer. I managed a gym for almost 10 years. And I was thinking about quitting and traveling and going all in on my podcast and my online business, doing the entrepreneur life. And I was weighing my options. Do I keep this? Again, it wasn't a corporate job, but it was a full-time salaried position as well as training commission. So I was making good money. I had health insurance and a 401k and all the stuff that personal trainers don't really get. So I was in a very fortunate place. And on the other side of that, I was like, do I take the leap and do I try entrepreneur life and do I move out and quit my job and all that stuff? And I was weighing the pros and cons, and I kept coming back to like, well, this job is good. This job is safe. There's no reason to quit. I'm in a good place. And that very feeling is what told me that I had to do it, right? I realized, again, through a decent amount of self-work and understanding of the human psyche, that feeling was me being afraid of the thing that I really needed to do. So the very feeling of being like, oh, I don't know if I should do this was what told me like I have to do this. And that's when I quit my job. I packed up my car and I started traveling. And then then the office job presented itself 9 months later after traveling for almost a year. And that was just an extension of that, of like, at that point, I had already quit. I was already just figuring out life. At some point, I was traveling with no destination in mind. And I knew that something eventually would tell me to stop. I had no endpoint. I started in New York. I drove down the coast to Florida and then across the Gulf to Texas. And that took me 9 months. So it was a long trip. It wasn't like a road trip. I was driving, stopping, living in different cities and things like that. And I was supposed to keep going from Texas and keep going to Mexico and then California, work my way back up to the Pacific Northwest. And I had no reason to stop. And I thought to myself, eventually there will be a reason. And when that reason presents itself, then, I'll take it. And this was that.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So you said a couple things that are really interesting to me because I've actually never heard anyone say it other than me to myself. So this is a lovely surprise. Um, is the fact that when you feel that sort of tension, I think you called it, from this fear of change, or there's something in you that you have learned to recognize as a flag to actually lean into it more. And I do the same thing, to the point that when people ask me why I chose banking or finance as a career path, a post personal training life, part of the reason why is because I remember being little and going to a mortgage renewal appointment with my parents, and I was sitting there, and I don't think I understood one word that the guy said the entire time. I had no idea what an interest rate was, an amortization. Like, they were saying all kinds of stuff that I was just like, this is completely beyond me. And I remember asking my dad after the fact, as any kid probably would, like, what does this mean? And what does that mean? And my dad explained it to me very well. And I understood it for maybe 30 seconds. And then it left me. And when I grew up later on and I was thinking of what type of job I should have, I actually thought of banking as a great opportunity to kind of dive in and force myself to, like, immerse myself in that world so that I had no choice but to understand that stuff. But it's interesting to me that that occurred to you as well, to lean into something that's uncomfortable, basically, is kind of the feeling, right? Or the gist of it. And I'm wondering, have you always been that way? Is that something that you learned to do? You talked about doing some self-work to kind of get to that place. And I'm sort of wondering, what does that entail? Is that the reason that you're able to do that? Or is it just sort of a personality trait for you?
Yeah, it's definitely not a personality trait. It's definitely something that was trained into me. And a lot of this comes through fitness, right? This is why I think a lot of people follow the same career trajectory, which is like fitness and then nutrition and then fixing their life, right? Whether it's a trainer, then nutrition coach, then life coach. You see those all over Instagram now, guru, self-help, whatever, or just people who want to lose a little weight. So they get into fitness and then they're like, okay, I need to eat better. Then they're like, oh, well, maybe there's a place where I live a better life. And they start to read books and they start to listen to podcasts and they start to do more. It's a natural progression. And that's because fitness teaches you that. Working out teaches you that you have to do hard things to progress. So literally the concept of progressive overload. If you do what you can already do, your body does not need to adapt. So that's why people who go to the gym and just walk on the treadmill for an hour, after a while, you'll see the same people. I worked at a gym for a long time, so I would see the same people. They were there every day, 5 days a week, walking on the treadmill for an hour. Now, is walking bad? Of course not. It's great. I'm glad you're doing it. But they weren't making progress anymore. And they've been doing this for 5, 10, 15 years, doing the exact same workout. And it's not just walking. The people who would come and do the exact same workout, whether it's lifting weights, cardio, yoga, whatever it is, they never progress. They never push themselves. So they don't give their body a reason to adapt. Same thing can be said for nutrition. If you're eating at maintenance and your goal is to lose weight or gain weight, you're never giving your body a reason to adapt. Everything is just adaptation. So your brain works the same way. If you are not challenging yourself in some way, you're never going to give yourself a reason to adapt. So you have to do things that are inherently outside of your comfort zone. That is literally how life happens, how growth happens. And then you have to understand too that growth will never happen unless it absolutely has to. So you will never get stronger physically unless you force yourself to. You'll never get stronger mentally unless you force yourself to. And then we can go one step further and realize that you either are growing or you're dying, right? A plant is either growing towards the sun or it's dying. There is no getting to stay the same. So if I'm not growing, that means that I'm dying. If I'm not getting better, if I'm not working on my body to make it physically better, it means it's breaking down and it's making myself weaker. It's making me sicker. If I'm not working on my brain to get myself smarter, I'm actually getting stupider, right? My memory is getting worse. My retention is getting worse, whatever it is. So there's only forward or backwards. There's no staying the same. That's what a big misconception people have. They're like, oh, well, yeah, it would be nice to work out, but like, I'm good where I'm at. It's like, well, if you're not working to get better, your body is actively breaking down at all times. So now I understand that I can only get better or get worse. So it's a very easy choice for me. I have to get better. And the only way to get better is to do uncomfortable things. It's literally the only way. So now I have to train myself to do uncomfortable things. And I have to, by definition, when I come up against that resistance, right? The resistance of you come to a fork in the road. Everything is a fork in the road. You do or you don't, yes or no, right? Sit down or I'm sitting right here, right? Do I stand up or do I stay sitting? Do I get up when my alarm goes off or do I hit snooze? Do I go to the gym or do I skip it? It's yes or no. And in that moment, one thing is going to be easier than the other. There's going to be a thing that's harder and a thing that's easier. And naturally, we're always going to want to do the easier thing. So when my alarm goes off, I'm going to want to snooze it and go back to sleep instead of getting up. When Netflix says, "Are you still watching?" I'm going to want to hit yes instead of getting up and going to the gym. When I'm doing a sales call, or I'm not doing a sales call, I'm sitting in the office and I know I have to make another call, my inclination is going to be to, let me just answer another email or do another thing and make busy work instead of actually hopping on the phone and doing the thing that's actually going to make me money. And I know that in every one of those situations, the very feeling of not wanting to do the thing is the thing that tells me that's the thing that I need to do. So the very feeling of I want McDonald's instead of a salad tells me I should eat the salad. The very feeling of I want to keep watching TV instead of working out is what tells me, oh, God damn it, I have to actually get up and work out. And it's just a way I've shifted and my life. And you ask how I learned it, it's from training people. I've seen it in myself, but this is just science. Everything that I just told you is literally the science of how change works in the body. And I've seen it play out 10,000 times because I've trained 10,000 hours. So when most people will only see this in themselves and not realize it until it's too late, I've had the luck and the good fortune to do this as a career to where I've seen it play out for 10 years across hundreds of clients, across thousands of hours. And it's fast forwarded that in my head where I'm like, okay, this is how it works. It's not an opinion. This is just literally how life works. And once I understand that, it's a very easy decision for me. Like, I don't want to get worse, so I have to get better.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when you talk about how it's very tempting to take the easy way out, it's interesting that I feel like there's always a part of us that knows that it's the wrong thing to do when it comes in relation to our goals. And yet we still make the choice that will be easier, but only in the short term, right? There is something about delayed gratification that is so hard, and we fall for the instant quick fixes, the dopamine hits of, yeah, okay, I'm just going to do what feels good right now. And I love that you went there, because I say the same thing, that fitness is not just about looking good. To me, fitness has value way beyond just the physical health side of things. It actually helps you invest time and effort and attention into things that are going to benefit you over the long term. And I think that we don't do enough of that in our day to day. For instance, somebody once asked me, I think I told you this already, but somebody asked me a while ago to describe my perfect partner. And one of the things that came up was that they would be into fitness. And the reason why, though, is not because they look good or their muscles are big or whatever. I literally couldn't care that much about that, although sure, it could be an indicator of health, whatever. But the actual thing that's attractive to me is that, especially nowadays, in addition to working a full-time 9 to 5, you have somebody who is committed to chipping away at something that is going to benefit them over the long term. It's like a sign of an ability to commit to something or to invest into something that's almost greater than them in the moment, or greater than their immediate need in the moment. And that's the part that's greater than just, okay, I feel good, like I got my dopamine hit, or my whatever, that my temporary fix, right? But what's curious for me is that people will say, especially in the fitness industry, clients, I'm thinking, they'll come to you and say, yeah, I want to lose 20 pounds, but then they won't do the things that will make that happen. Right. And so the question kind of becomes, well, why are we so resistant to change when we say we want the change? Right. We're not openly against it. You'll have clients that they pay big money to have you help them change, and yet they're still resistant to it. So why do you think that is? And how do you think we get past that?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, right? And to understand, for anyone listening, this is not just fitness, right? This is everything in life. This is why I stopped teaching fitness and moved towards more mindset and personal development coaching, because this is the big question. If you can answer this question, you can apply it to fitness. Why don't you do things that you say that you want to do? Why don't you do things that you've committed to doing? Again, and that's working out, that's eating healthy, that's working on your business, that's going to therapy, that's doing whatever it is. That is the conundrum of the human condition. Why can we do and take actions that are directly counter to our own best interest? We can say, I know what I'm supposed to. Everyone knows what they're supposed to do. There's a book for everything. Whatever your goal is, you can Google right now, how do I achieve this? And they will give you a step-by-step goal that worked for 10,000 other people. And if you follow those steps, you will probably get this similar, if not the same results. So why don't we do those things? That's because it's hard, right? It's again, it goes back to, everything goes back to human nature. And human nature, it was what I just said, hard versus easy. And human nature is always to choose the easier thing because it's a survival mechanism. What is going to give me the biggest chance in this moment, right now, not 10 years from now, not 10 months from now, but right now, in surviving? That's the program that's running in every animal's brain, not just humans, every living creature. This program is running over and over and over, every second, every decision. And so everything runs through that filter. Is this going to make me more or less likely to survive? And the number one thing that's going to make me more or less likely to survive is how much energy I have. If I run out of energy, I will die. I will lose the game. That's 100% guaranteed. My survival brain, my evolutionary brain doesn't understand Uber Eats delivery. It doesn't understand that we can talk through this magical machine right here. Doesn't understand any of that. What it does understand is that I need calories to survive. And if I don't have enough calories, I will die. So therefore, anything that spends more energy is less appealing to my evolutionary brain than anything that spends less energy. Therefore, going to the gym will always be less appealing than sitting on the couch. Eating a salad will always be less appealing than eating a hamburger. The hamburger has more calories. Now we can go a step further and talk about, like, we want to take this away from just the fitness world, anything that, and not just about energy, anything that makes us less likely to survive. So in our evolution, there are certain things that would make us less likely to survive. Those things are embarrassment, right? We are pack creatures. So anything that puts us farther away from the pack inherently makes us less likely to survive. So that's why we fear things like public speaking. That's why we fear making that sales call that I know I need to make, because if I don't, I won't get paid. But I could, that not getting paid I will not starve to death for a couple months. I have a savings. But right now I will face embarrassment if they say no, even though there's no real embarrassment. It's just some random person on the phone. But that's the cycle that my brain is going through all the time. And everything runs through that filter. Is this going to, and again, this is not conscious, this is completely subconscious, but that's why inherently this is built into all of us to do the easier thing. You just talked about delayed gratification, instant gratification. Instant gratification makes me survive. Delayed gratification makes me survive later, and my survival brain does not care about later. So every decision that you ever make, you're fighting this battle. And that's why it's not wrong or weird that people don't do the stuff that they're supposed to do. It's what the human body was made for. It's what the human brain was made for. You're fighting a game or playing a game that's rigged. You were meant to lose, because the only game, the name of the game is survive. And that's one thing that for guarantee every person listening to this will actually do is die. So that means the one thing that we're supposed to do, we can't do. So everything else runs around that, and it's trying to make us more likely to survive for longer. And inherently, we can never actually survive. So like everything is just running through that schema over and over and over. So anything that makes it, so now you understand that that's always going on, right? Now, how do you break out of that? You have to at least make it easier. Give yourself a fighting chance. So this is where things like making habits easier, this is where habit science comes into play, right? This is where sitting on the couch versus going to the gym for a workout. Like, okay, can I make that a little bit easier? Can I make sitting on the couch less appealing? And can I make going to the gym more appealing? So can sitting on the couch, can that be, again, like I log out of my apps every time I leave the house or something like that. So when I go down and sit and watch Netflix, I have to literally log in and type my name and stuff like that. And instead of going to the gym, I have a home gym in my garage, or I just go for a run so I don't actually have to drive anywhere. So now instead of my addicting Netflix, which I can just hit yes, 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 or I don't even have to hit anything. If I just keep watching, it'll just keep playing forever. And then driving 30 minutes to the gym where there's people who I don't like, and there's all these like a million reasons I don't want to go. If I can decrease that distance, so like I said, I logged out of my Netflix last night. So now when I sit down and I turn on the TV, it says input your name and your password. And I already don't want to do that. And now I have my running shoes that are right next to my couch, and I go, I'm supposed to go for a run right now. I've decreased that distance, and it's not a surefire. I still have that same dichotomy going on in my head, but I've made it a little bit easier for me to make that decision and make the hard thing win. And that's always what we have to do, is we have to try to make this as easy as possible, because like I just said, you're playing a game that is designed for you to lose. So if you make it any harder than it has to be, that's a guaranteed way to self-sabotage and lose from the beginning.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I like the tips that you shared on changing your habits. What I want to go back to for a second is just a couple minutes ago, you said something about that people know what they should do. And it kind of got me thinking that I almost wonder whether that's part of the issue, where people, what their source is of information on what it is that they should do, right? Like going back to their actual, what their goals are and what the motivations are for those goals. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on whether that plays a part, because what I'm thinking is, if someone comes to you and says they want to lose 20 pounds, do they really though? In my experience, I saw that part of the problem is that that person sometimes just doesn't actually want to lose the 20 pounds. They just think that they should. And, if I think that if the source of our motivations are imposed on us externally by other people's expectations, our why is not really aligned enough with the outcome to actually produce the required action to make it happen. Right. And in my opinion, we need to learn to just be more real with ourselves and spend the time to decide whether that's actually what we want for ourselves or not. But I'm wondering on kind of the motivation front, if you agree, or you're welcome to disagree, or if you have any experience with clients in a similar situation.
Yeah, 100%. So what I said was, people know what they need to do. So if you have a goal, there's a step-by-step goal guide to get you there. What you should do is a completely different story, because there's no such thing as what you should do. And this is a big misconception. I'm supposed to be 20 pounds less. I need to lose 10 pounds. I need to have abs. No, not all of that is made up. It's all put in place by either social media or the old school TV media, by commercials, by what your mom used to tell you when she used to say little girls don't wear bigger than a size 6 or something like that. Like, it's all implanted in our head. None of that is real. And that goes to what you're saying 100%. If you don't have a real good reason to make a change, it goes back to what I was just saying. Your brain is going to go, why waste the energy? Right. So everything goes back to that loop of like, is this worth the energy I'm going to expend to do it? So using that perfect example of, this is why find your why is such a cliche thing at this point, but it's so true. Literally, my podcast, I think I have like 250 episodes of my podcast, something like that. Episode 1, scroll all the way back to 3 years ago. Episode 1 is literally called Start With Why, because I think it's that important. You need a deep-seated why to create change, because if you don't, your brain is going to go, why am I doing this? Is this worth the energy? And if your only reason is because like, I want to be 20 pounds lighter, it's going to go, nah, screw it. Right? Who doesn't want to be 20 pounds lighter? I call these magic wand goals. It's like, if someone would wave a magic wand and you could receive it, you would say yes, right? I want to be rich. I want to have $1 million. I want to be successful. I want to be, it's like, well, no shit. Who doesn't? I mean, I sure do, right? Like, if you walk down the street and ask everybody, hey, would you like to lose 20 pounds? Almost no one's going to tell you no. If you ask somebody, hey, would you like to have a successful business? Hey, would you like to have $1 million? Like, of course, everyone's going to say yes to these. Now, the people who actually go out and do it have a deeper reason than that. Why does it matter that you're actually going to do the thing? Because you don't get a magic wand. You don't get a thing that's handed to you. You would take it if you hand it to you, but that's not the question. The question isn't, do you want to lose 20 pounds? The question is, do you want to eat healthy, exercise 4 times a week, go to sleep at 9 o'clock at night, wake up at 6 a.m., stop smoking, stop drinking so much alcohol, cut back on certain social events, do all the things that you have to do, so that in 6 months, you could potentially maybe have lost 20 pounds. Maybe you'll have only lost 5, maybe you'll have lost 25. And that's the real deal that you get. And then you can make that decision for yourself. But usually you're only going to say yes to that decision if you have a real reason. If it's just something surface level, like Yeah, well, who wouldn't want to be 20 pounds less and look nice on the beach? You're probably going to give up. And that's, why we have to have something deeper, but it's more about it. Again, it still comes back to that same question that I'm asking. It's like, what is the point of this? My brain subconsciously is always going, why does this matter? Why is this worth my time right now? Why is this worth my energy, my most finite resource? Why is this trainer telling me to do these sit-ups worth my energy? Why is this, me again, getting up and cooking a meal rather than just ordering a pizza? Why is it worth my energy? And if it's a surface level, like BS kind of like, yeah, well, it's just because I want to look better. It's like, well, that's easy to sweep under the rug. Our brain's biggest superpower is justification. You will justify your way out of anything. I want to lose 20 pounds, but I haven't had pizza in so long, but I really deserved it. Oh, I was so good on my diet for the first 5 days this week. But you know what? Self-love is important, and all of these things are real, right? They're real. But the point is that your brain will always look for reasons to go against what you're doing. It's the same stuff that we've been talking about. Your brain is trying to trick you at any given point. That's really the long and short of it. For every single thing that you try to do that's positive, it's hard to do. Your brain doesn't want to do hard things, so it's always looking for a reason not to do the hard thing. And you have to have a real reason to do it if you're going to break through that first. That's just the very first layer of getting through things, but you have to have that to have the very base level of at least having a chance.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. It's fascinating to me how incredibly great we are at finding loopholes in those moments, right? It's like, oh, yeah, self-love. That means I'm supposed to eat this entire bag of mini eggs and, drink a bottle of wine. That's self-love, right? Like our brains just completely play tricks on us in those moments. But I love what you said about the why. And it just makes me think that our why really needs to be big enough to sort of outshine the hard things that are required to make the outcome happen. And what I'm learning, and please let me know if you think otherwise, but I'm learning that our why really has to be tied to something emotional. And we need an emotional connection to the reason why we're doing something, because we are wired to have, I think, the strongest associations with things on an emotional level. And I think sometimes our whys can sometimes be too cognitive, and that's where we get into trouble, because we can find loopholes around it. And it's like the clients that I had in the past that were the most successful, their whys were like, I want to make my children proud, not I want to look better for myself when I look in the mirror or something like that, because my mom told me that I should be 20 pounds lighter, or to your point earlier. So I don't know if you found that to be the case. It's just a theory of my own, but I would say that it may be worthwhile to dig deeper a little bit on the why. Like, when you're asking yourself what's your why, then maybe ask yourself, well, why is that your why? And get to a point that it does become emotional and kind of grounded in something that's very real for you and very personal for you.
Yeah, I mean, this is the concept, right? They call it the 5 whys or the 7 whys, right? Why? Why does that matter? Ask again. Why does that matter? Ask again. Why does that matter? Eventually, you keep peeling back the layers until you get somewhere that's fairly deep. And it's usually an emotion, or it's usually about someone else.
Mm.
Most people who make real change, it's not for themselves. It's for their kids. It's for their mom. It's because they just turned 50 and their dad had a heart attack at 50 and they don't want to do that to their kids. It's because they want to build a business so that they can leave a legacy, or so that they can help more people or something like that. It's like you have to get past this surface level BS of just like, oh, well, I just want to be whatever. And again, I'm not hesitant, but I don't like to overplay this, because I think that people hear this stuff and it's like, oh, like find a why. It's like, that is not it. You can have your why, like you need it. But again, that's 1% of getting you anywhere. It's like, it's not actually it doesn't create any change. You'll be more likely to succeed having a deep-seated why than not having one, but it is not going to be the thing that actually gets you past the finish line.
Yeah, it's not the be all end all to get you there. That's definitely true. So my last question, so I'm just looking at the time here, but I am curious, what is your kind of practical go-to way to actually help your clients change their mindset? It's an intangible thing that we talk about when we say changing our mindset. And so I'm just curious, if you had to try to articulate it, is it mainly around those habit changing tips and just providing new perspectives and educating on behavior change and things like that? Or is there more to it?
Yeah, I think that habit change comes later. I think that everything starts up here, right? Habits are actions, and that is a result of a changing of mindset. And again, all of this stuff has happened congruently at the same time, right? You're working, you're changing, you're growing. Your mindset doesn't change. You can start working out tomorrow. You can change your diet right now. That doesn't mean your mindset has inherently changed, and that doesn't mean that it hasn't also. So it's all of this stuff is kind of fluid. So that inherently makes it harder, right? Because you can't really put a definition. What even is mindset? If you ask 100 people like what mindset is, you're going to get 100 different answers, and 100 of them might be right because there's no real definition of what this is. But to me, everything starts. I teach what's called the change loop, and the change loop is AEA. It's awareness, education, action. So awareness is simply, do I know what even is going on right now? Like a conversation like this might be eye-opening for some people because it might go, oh, I never thought about it like that. I never looked through something. I never looked at it through the lens of like, everything is about evolution. Everything is about survival mechanisms, because I just didn't realize, okay, now I'm aware. That's just aware. Doesn't do anything for you, doesn't create any change. Next thing is education. Okay, now I'm aware, I'm problem aware. What do I actually do with this information? Okay, now I can start to look at things through, is it again, is it short-term versus long-term thinking? Is this my survival brain sabotaging me again? I can start to be, like I told you, I've trained myself to do this. That's all it is. I'm aware, I'm problem aware, so I can see it happening. Most people, not most people, everyone, this is happening to all the time. They just don't have verbiage to put it to it. So they just be like, oh, that's just life. Life just, that's just how it is, or that just happens. Most people see things after the fact, right? How many times as a nutrition coach does someone come to me and go, oh, I ate so bad yesterday, I shouldn't have done that. It's like, well, can't change it now. Like, why didn't you stop it? You probably knew before you did that it wasn't like that. If you're trying to lose weight, and eating 2 whole Domino's pizzas probably wasn't the thing that's going to get you closer to losing weight. And yet you did it anyway. So why is it that we always know after the fact and not before? Right? Because we weren't aware. And that awareness is the key. So then we go education. Okay, I know I shouldn't be eating Domino's pizza 2 at a time if I'm going to lose weight. What can I do about that? I can meal prep. I can, again, delete the Domino's app off my phone to make it harder for me to order, because they have the thing that makes it like, would you like your same order? You don't even have to type it in anymore. It's just like, they'll just deliver it to you. You can put space in between those things. And these are, I can learn about food quality. Oh, I didn't understand what calories were before. I didn't understand how to read a nutrition label. Now I'm educated on that. I can actually look and say, okay, whoa, this is a lot of calories. Maybe I don't want to do that. That's education. But the last piece is still action, because action is everything. None of those things make any difference if you don't actually change what you do, right? You can have all the education in the world. Plenty of people are reading all the books, listening to all the podcasts, but they're not putting it into action. They're not doing the workout. They're not doing the business plan. Again, this is not just about fitness or anything like that. You can take all of the principles I'm talking about here and apply them to literally anything in life. And that's why I talk like this, because this is just life. My podcast is called Happy, Healthy, Human, and human is the last word because this is just human stuff. This is human nature that I'm talking about. And this is why I get so passionate about this, and why I can talk about this stuff so matter-of-factly, because I know that every person on the planet is dealing with this exact scenario over and over and over and over. So I have to be aware of the problem. I have to educate myself on what the problem is, how to go about changing it, what are some options that I have, and then I have to take action. And then that's a loop, because that brings me right back to where I started with a new thing, a new problem, something new to be aware about, something new to educate myself on, and something new to take action on. And it goes in a loop like that. But awareness is the first step. You can't change a problem you don't know exists. And that's where most people are walking around, in that what's known as unconscious unawareness. Like, you don't even know what you don't know. So like, that's why it's like, again, the whole thing of being a personal trainer, then being a nutrition coach, then being, like, you just have, like, once you start learning about fitness and learning about the body, you're like, oh, wait, there's this whole other world. And then you start learning about food, and you're like, oh my God, everyone's getting it wrong. They're doing all this stuff backwards. And now you start to go through it again, same thing with reading books or listening to podcasts. That's just opening your eyes to that there's a different way to live. Like, oh, okay, this one way, where people just eat fast food and don't do this and don't take care of their bodies and smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol on the weekends. Like, there's a different way to live. I didn't realize that before, because all my friends are doing it the one way. My parents did it that way. My parents sat and they drank every Friday and every Saturday, and that's just what I was raised in. Now I see that there is a different way. Okay, let me dive into this. Let me understand exercise selection. Let me understand calories. And then can I do something with that? But every piece, again, it's a loop too, because any one of those, without any one of them, the whole thing falls apart, right? It's like a three-legged stool.
Yeah.
You can't have action if you don't have the education and the awareness around it. If you're
Yeah.
not aware, you can't educate yourself on something. Like they all are necessary to create any type of change in any area that we're talking about.
Yeah, and once you take action, then you almost want to reassess, because you're
Right.
not going to take well, typically you wouldn't take massive action to the point that it got you from 0 to 100, right? It's incremental, and so
Right.
you want to then reassess, and then you be aware once again on your new position and situation, right? And take it from there. I really like that. I've never heard of it with the three steps before. And just talking about awareness, there's one thing that I'm starting to realize lately is that awareness takes time and it takes attention. And when I say it takes time, I don't mean that it takes a long time, like it's going to take 10 years to become aware. What I mean is that we need to actually set aside the time to become aware. Like you can't start becoming aware unless you make space and time, like in your mind, for it. And I think that the fact that people tend to live such busy lifestyles these days, it makes it more challenging to find that time. And there's always an excuse that, oh, I'm too busy. Or even if you're not busy and you have the time, your mind is on something else. So that's why I'm saying time and attention, right? Where you need to recognize that it is a worthwhile investment to look inward and to become aware and to listen to podcasts, but with your attention on it, right? Or get a coach. These types of things that might seem like, well, I could be working or I could be thinking about something else, but it really, it's not going to happen for you. I don't even think that the awareness piece can happen without that. So just a message to, I guess, myself and anyone else that maybe hasn't seen it that way before, because I'm starting to learn that too, right? I'm the first to put my hand up and say and admit that I easily could be constantly busy with things and have my mind on everything else, but recentering, I guess, once in a while is becoming more of a priority for me, because I recognize that that's the catalyst for me to connecting to my awareness or becoming more aware. So I just wanted to kind of add those 2 cents on that.
Yeah. I mean, it's what this stuff doesn't happen by accident, right? Like you don't accidentally become, again, better. Like I was just going back to what I was saying in the beginning, like life is to maintain the status quo. It's
Yeah.
always going to want you to keep what you have, because getting more is hard. And you've mentioned time and attention, and the last thing I'll add is energy. It's
Yeah.
TEA, right? Time, energy, attention. These are our three most valuable resources. The only things that we can't get back. Energy, maybe you can get back because you can reset at the end of the day, but your time and your attention each day are finite. You can only have 24 hours in the day, no matter what. And in those 24 hours, at any given moment, you can only be paying attention to one thing at any given time. So anything that seeks to take your time, your energy, or your attention is inherently valuable. And you have to be extremely
Selective about.
purposeful
Yeah.
about what you allow to take your time, to take your energy, to take your attention. But on the flip side of that, again, it will not happen by accident. You will not fall across success in any area, whether it's fitness, whether it's mental, whether it's happiness, whether it's relationships, whether it's business. You have to want it. You have to work for it. And even then, it's not guaranteed, but at least you have a chance, because if you don't do those things, you're guaranteed not to get it.
Right. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I think that is a great place to leave it off. Before we go though, Paul, I did want to ask, where can people go to learn more about you and your work if they want to check you out?
Yeah, for sure. I love that, and I appreciate that. The number one place is my podcast. That's what I'm doing the most with right now. I would love for people to just come listen to my podcast. I have hundreds and maybe thousands of hours at this point of free information like this. Again, talking about awareness and education. If you listen to that, you will be farther along. It's the Happy, Healthy Human podcast. It's available on all podcast platforms. Beyond that, if anyone wants to get in contact with me directly, you can just find me. It's my name, Paul Levitin, on all social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn. It's just at Paul Levitin. It's very simple. You can also email me, paul@paullevitin.com. It's very, very simple.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those details. And thank you so much for this conversation, Paul. Honestly, I think it was a ton of value crammed into a short period of time. And I can only imagine, well, I know because I've checked out your podcast that there's tons more exactly equally and more valuable information out there. So thank you for investing your time in that as well for your listeners and for mine. I do like to thank our listeners as well, always for their time and their attention and their energy, as we know how valuable those resources are. Please make sure to check Paul out online and also to subscribe to the Happy Healthy Human, as well as to Mindset Over Matter, so you don't miss out on more amazing episodes like this one today with Paul. So thank you one more time, Paul, and take care.